The first video had given you a glimpse of various types of assessment carried out to evaluate the developmental and learning needs of children in ECE. Now, the second video of this module hopes to give you an insight of why assessment is needed based on 4 specific purposes as laid down by the National Education Council. Moreover, the video would connect the purpose of assessment with the types of assessment. At the end of this video, you will be able to critically examine the 4 major purposes of assessing young children, apprehend what and when to assess young children. Now, on to the aspect of why to assess. Every facilitator of young children engaged in the process of assessment should need to ask herself certain questions like: who has to be assessed? What has to be assessed? Who will assess? When to assess? How to interpret the results? And how to use the results. National Research Council 2008, as cited by Bredicamp, jots down 4 fundamental purposes of assessment in any early childhood programs. They are to enhance teaching learning process, identify children with special or developmental needs, evaluate the outcome of the program, and demonstrate accountability. Upon the 4 purposes of assessment as mentioned, the first 2 are concerned with the individual child to support his or her learning developmental needs. The last 2 purposes have its focus on gathering information on groups of children to evaluate the effectiveness of the whole program or the center where the child is enrolled. Let us look into each of these purposes in detail. First is to enhance the teaching and learning process. The process of teaching and assessment always should simultaneously occur to enhance the progress in learning. The primary assessor in a classroom setting is a teacher or the facilitator. In an early learning center, the assessment is mostly informal and performance based. The general way to assess is observation. Now, look at the situation of a teacher of a preschool using the observation method of assessment to make decisions regarding the planning of curriculum and shift in the teaching strategy. For the curriculum goal of making the children in the class to differentiate the beginning and ending sounds in words, the teacher of the class conducts a rhyme session with the whole group. By observing the children in action, the teacher finds out that a few children were not able to learn the rhyming sounds. So the teacher planned a different strategy of making the children do the same activity in a small group and then moving on to play rhyming games by one-to-one approach. The above situation vividly portrays the steps in the assessment process towards improving the teaching learning process as shown to you in the figure. The steps in assessment are observing and collecting evidence, recording and documenting, reflecting on and interpreting evidence, individualizing teaching strategies, and then the last is planning and adopting curriculum. Though the observation method of assessment has got several advantages, the teacher should use as many sources of information concerning the evidence and should not base a conclusion with one encounter. The second is to identify children with special or developmental needs. One major objective of the assessment is to conduct routine checkups for vision, hearing, and general health to ensure healthy development. Equal importance has to be given to identify disabilities in the 3 major domains of development, namely physical, cognitive, and psychosocial. Realizing the need for early health and disability screening, Early Learning Center should consider the legal responsibility of identifying children with special or developmental needs and refer them for appropriate referral services. Hence, the whole process involves 2 steps. One is screening, second one is diagnostic testing. Screening. Administration of screening tests to all children in a class is the first step to identify the children who are at risk with a possible learning or developmental delay. The screening test, otherwise referred to as developmental screening, include items to assess motor, language and cognitive development. These tests also assess the perceptual ability of children. Amidst the advantages of screening tests administered to young children, the process is not foolproof as some of the problems go undetected, or even a few of the problems identified may not need serious interventions. Hence, the second level of testing, called the diagnosis, is needed. Diagnostic testing is a second stage of identifying special needs that are followed by the initial screening. This testing identifies the specific learning or developmental needs of children. Moreover, the diagnostic testing does not stop with that of identification. Rather, it goes to the next level of planning, a customized intervention plan pertinent to the identified individual. The diagnostic tests are much more reliable as it seeks information from multiple sources, namely standardized tests, observation details procured from the parents and teachers, medical examinations, etc. Also, the diagnostic testing procedure should be carried out by trained specialists, maybe a special educator, psychologist or a speech therapist. Now, the third purpose is to evaluate program quality. Any program should get initiated by setting up their long-term and short-term goals. But the assessment of the above said goals and objectives depends on an appropriate and accurate assessment of a program. The assessment to evaluate the program outcome should include how well the child as a group or the children as a group achieve the goals. As a result of the assessment are combined and reported as total scores for the whole group rather than individual scores. The program outcome evaluation is usually meant for policy makers and the funders or the owners to recognize the program's cost effectiveness. The fourth purpose is to assess for accountability. Though the purpose of accountability is interrelated with the purpose of evaluating the program quality, it differs in holding the stakeholder, the teacher or the center or the program itself as responsible for its effectiveness or ineffectiveness. For the assessment of accountability, a target of what the child enrolled in a program should be able to do at the end of the program should be set in relation to the local standards and then be checked. Hence, the scoring is on the individual teacher and standards, which is then computed for the whole program or center. Now, let us look into how the purpose of assessment is connected with the types of assessment. The discussion on the four purposes of assessment had made it clear that different tools and procedures have to be adopted for the same. Moreover, the purpose had also stated that for high reliability, multiple sources of information is needed. So, how can we connect the purpose with the type of assessment? The following section would provide the types of assessment to be used to attain the four different purposes. For every purpose, the types of formal and informal assessment tools that can be used are listed to you. For the first purpose, enhance the teaching learning process, the tools that can be used for formal assessment are validated observations tools, standardized rating scales, criterion referenced achievement test. For informal assessment, tests and procedures formulated by teachers, routine observation and unstructured interviews. And for the second purpose of identifying children with special or developmental needs, the formal assessment tools that can be used are developmental screening test, diagnosis test and norms referenced standardized test. And the informal assessment are teacher observation of children through structured observation tool, information gathered from parents. For the third purpose of evaluating the program quality, the tools under the formal assessment may be criterion reference tests set to assess program goals, valid observation tools to assess teacher quality and her interaction with children. Few of the informal assessment tools are information from parents and children, assessment by teacher in classroom setting and portfolios. And for the last purpose, that's assessing for accountability, criterion reference test keyed on achievement is a formal assessment tool. For informal assessment, the assessment by teachers in a classroom setting and portfolios would serve the purpose. So, the second video has explained you the purposes of assessment. But how can it be used for the effective evaluation. The third video will clarify your doubts of the indicators of effective assessment. Thank you.